Today we're ranking every card in Clash Royale from worst to best. The worst card in Clash Royale. Yes, I'm wearing a Clash Royale shirt because it is very comfy and they gave it to me at World Finals. I am not that much of a geek. Rune Giant, the worst card in Clash Royale because of her inability to do anything properly. Now, the Rune Giant really doesn't have enough health to be a viable tank, doesn't give enough of a bonus with her ability to make it viable to use instead of something else. Like, you'd rather have a DPS dealer or a mini tank or a win condition. She's kind of a bad hybrid between a win condition and a support troop that really does nothing because she doesn't play defense either. So honestly, her buff really doesn't do anything to outside of 3 cards, so it's really not worth it to play unless you're trolling. Next up is the Goblin Giant, and I am separating Evos and Heroes from normal cards, so I will be ranking all of the cards with an Evo or a Hero normally. So the Goblin Giant, I mean, aside from the fact that his Evo is probably one of the worst in the game, he really has a problem with his health. He dies way too quickly compared to all the other troops like Giants and like Golems, and really they provide something beneficial. With this, he's 6 elixir and all he does is have 2 little wet paper towel shooters on his back. They do nothing. Barbarian Hut isn't the worst card in Clash Royale. It just isn't. There's times, of course, there are times and situations where every single card on this list can get value, and there are decks where every single card on this list can be good in. However, we have to rank them in some sort of order. Barb Hut really isn't good. It's not good in any way. It's just a funny troll card that sometimes you can get value out of because your opponents use tanks into the barbs, which is a good trade. Okay, so maybe this is a little bit of a controversial one, but Mortar, the base Mortar, Evo Mortar is a billion times better and makes this card way better and is what makes Mortar decks work. If you took the Evo out of all of the meta Mortar decks, Mortar would die instantly. The Mortar itself really is just used as a defensive building, and you're literally only using it to cycle to your Evo. It is not used in any other situation and is just bad. It's just bad. Here's the problem with separating the cards from their evolutions. The usage percentage and win percentage of the E-Dragon are pitifully low. Its win percentage in Ultimate Champion is 42%, and it remains really bad in just all of Ranked. But there is a problem with using those stats, right? Because if you think about it, if everyone who uses E-Drag uses the Evo, then the stats on the normal E-Drag are probably really bad because nobody plays it, so there's less of a stat pool. However, with that in mind, the E-Drag is still a really bad card, and outside of its Evo, it's completely useless against pretty much everything in the game. You'd rather have something that actually does damage or does splash compared to the E-Drag, though its Chain and its Evo make it one of the best Evos in the game. It's still, well, maybe not one of the best, but a top 15, top 20 Evo, that doesn't make up for the normal card being complete shit. Mirror is honestly not a reliable card at all, and Mirror consistently does very little to no value, and almost everyone that uses Mirror just uses it as a troll or uses it as a random surprise, in which 1 out of every 10 games they play, they'll win off of a surprise Mirror. It's really not worth it, and you'll usually, for +1 elixir, be able to get the same value you got out of the card you mirrored with a different card that costs 1 or equal elixir. Okay, now Clone isn't much better at all, but you can win games with Clone, assuming your opponents somehow can't tell that your Giant Skeleton Skelly Barrel push is about to be cloned. It's just not a good card at all. It hasn't been viable in years, and although again you could troll with it, and I'm sure I could probably cook up some wins with Lava Clone, it's a dog shit card. Now this is where my own judgment as a top ladder player comes into play. Spear Goblins aren't statistically the 114th worst card in the game, but why would I ever play this card? They're not fun, they're lame, they don't do any damage, and they're pretty much only used in specific cycle decks where I'm not even really sure why they get used. They just get used because I guess they're a bait card. In the majority of bait decks, you don't see these things used, and really, I mean, they're cool in the Goblin Gang, but by themselves, they do a grand total of 40 damage, and they distract for a couple of seconds. Why would I not just use skeletons? Okay, now I have a really big grudge with these kinds of cards like Archers. Again, Archers could get bumped up if we were including the Evo, barely, because the Evo Archers can do some damage, and they can arrows bait, and the normal Archers are essentially better looking spear goblins. They do the same damn thing, except there's one less of them and they can survive arrows. And I guess they arrows bait, but they do no damage. They're no threat on offense, no threat on defense. I dead ass would just sit, if I had a loon going in, I'd just sit there and watch them shoot at the loon. I'm pretty sure if it was being tanked for, like, they're useless. Okay, now take what I said about the archers and apply it to the little prince, except he has the ability to summon a knight that you will almost never use, and that costs 6 elixir, and then I could probably draw up, I think, like 842 different combinations of ways to make a 6 elixir better value than using the little prince and his ability. One, if you somehow have absolutely no way to touch him, and he fully charges up, he'll make it worth like Musketeer DPS. Like I don't even know if he does more than a Musketeer when he's fully charged up. It's not a good card at all. Worst champion in the game. He used to be the best, and then they nerfed him 7 times because Clash Royale can't figure out how to just release something that's balanced, because they're not creative with their game ideas. So they just make broken card. Everybody plays broken card. Hooray! And then they nerf it to the ground after everybody pays for it, or like whines about it enough, I guess. Goblin Machine! What was a really fun card to go up against, and I mean fun, and of course it was fun. I loved getting absolutely annihilated by the Goblin Machine. This card is just dead now because, like it was justified, it got its nerfs, and what do you know? It was only good because it was completely unbalanced. So now it's just in the shitter because wasn't a good concept to release, and to make it balanced, you just make it trash because you can't have this card or card ideas like this be balanced. It really doesn't do anything. I'd rather have any other 5 elixir support troop in the game, including the wizard. Back in the day, I actually used to use the bomber, and now, after it got that random buff that just made it die to like 2 baby drag shots, 3 tower hits, 1 mega minion slap, it fell off the face of the earth. It was falling off the face of the earth like rapidly, and now it's just like that support troop card that's essentially a little better than spear goblins because it splashes. No. So thinking about it a little bit, I would say it's a little harsh to put the Tesla at 109. But statistically, I'm not only using them, but it has a 45% win rate and a 2% use rate. It's very bad. And it really doesn't, I can't think of when I would use it without its Evo. Like, just the Tesla as a normal building it's okay, right? But it's really easy to just spell down. It's easy to distract. It's easy to mess up placements with it. And Tesla just really isn't offering any of that oomph that I want from my building. Like, Cannon's cheap. Inferno Tower does crazy DPS. Bomb Tower's good against Splash. If you don't have the Evo Tesla, it's kind of just this, like, crappy do-it-all building that really doesn't do it all at all. Now, Elite Barbarians are going in front of the Tesla, not because I'm really, like, comparing each card to the previous cards, but because E-Barbs can win you games on offense. There are times when E-Barbs become kind of annoying to defend, and that can be, you know, usually just in mid-ladder when I use all my ground cards on something like the Royal Giant and the Hog Rider that they, and the Valkyrie that my opponents played into me. And then they go E-Barbs the bridge after I overspent because, I don't know, I was scrolling on TikTok while playing or something. So now Elite Barbarians are taking my tower. They can get value, they just usually suck. Okay, so I don't really know why Clash Royale decided to give this 3 different options of playing. The Evo Wizard is okay. I honestly like it a lot because its shield knocks back things and survives spells. The Hero Wizard is, I don't really know how to use it properly, and everybody I face doesn't really know how to use it properly, but people swear to me that it gets value. The normal Wizard is like, oh, this card, it just infuriates me. There's times when it gets good value, but consistently underperforms, consistently dies too easily. Oftentimes, I'd rather have a different range card, and it is quite expensive for the offering it's giving us. Phoenix, I'm willing to accept Wizard being above Phoenix if you really want to die on that hill. Everything on this list is not, I mean, it's not magnified to the absolute core. You could probably swap a couple cards on here. Phoenix just is really bad. I'd say it can be a little bit of a pest on defense, which is why I'd put it above Wizard, is because sometimes the egg just respawns, and now that it got that buff that makes the mini Phoenix no longer a mini Phoenix, it can get annoying when you don't have a response to the egg, and you basically just get crazy value with the Phoenix, which doesn't happen very often, but it usually gets more value than like the Wizard, because I'm going to assume your opponent doesn't just feed you Wizard value. If you set up a scenario for every single card in this list, you can make them seem better than they are. I'm just going with what happens most of the games. Phoenix, Biggest issue, applies literally no offensive pressure whatsoever, even with the egg. Now, XC is a weird card because Executioner, again, you can set up a scenario where it's going to get value, but consistently, the Executioner without its Evo underperforms. I mean, it has a lot of health, but there can be so many times where you just need to kill something and there's a tank in front of it. XC gets distracted by the tank, gets mauled by something like minions even, because it's not perfectly lined up. You have to spend extra elixir to overcommit with the XC, and you can get punished in the opposite lane for that. There's so many opportunities for the XC to really do a ton of work that where he just doesn't, and can honestly get more value than the wizard in a lot of circumstances. But without his Evo, just underperforms versus a lot of things, again, for the cost. He'd be much higher if he was like 4 elixir. I mean, again, void I can get value with. There's times when I can void things and my opponent doesn't know I have a void, so I'm able to kill maybe a wizard with the void because they didn't know it that I had a void. After that, the void starts to get very effectively useless. It can be used if you use it very carefully to wipe out swarm units. But again, if most of the time it's just being a shittier version of the fireball or the arrows, I'd rather just run the fireball or the arrows or any other spell in the game. Voids like risk reward is more risk than reward and usually doesn't give you that much value. All right, we've got the Barbies. The Barbies die to fireball, die to every splash card in the game. And while I can make a scenario where they'll get more value, they almost never get value ever because they're way too easy to kill, and I'd rather have a different swarm unit or a different card that costs less elixir. It is a very expensive overcommitment to most things. Bats. Minions exist, and I could flick a bat and it would die. The Goblin Barrel without its Evo is like one of the worst win conditions I've ever seen in my life, and if you've ever played somebody with multiple spells, you know why I'm saying this. The only reason Goblin Barrel bait works is because of the other broken bait mechanics in the deck. Firecracker without her Evo and without having a selective deck for her really underperforms. Walking activates the King Tower, half of the time spectates your matches, and honestly isn't useful over a lot of other cards unless I have the Evo. Again, skeleton dragons, I mean, technically don't have the 99th worst statistics in the game, but they honestly aren't used in any other deck ever since the baby dragon has become an existing card, and are good against royal recruits and used in literally no deck ever. When's the last time you saw the skeleton dragons? Fire spirits. Every other spirit gets more consistent value, although shout out to the furnace's fire spirits. Battle healer is an objectively terrible card, except for when your opponent either has 2 of them or you made a slight overcommitment, and I mean very slight. You made any overcommitment against the E-Golem player and you can no longer kill this card. It's getting a rank in the top 100 just because I've lost games exclusively to this thing not being able to die. Battle Ram is a decent card, but without its Evo and without a very selective deck for it, it's way too easy to kill, unreliable as a win condition, and honestly gets stunned or knocked back by way too many things. The Battle Ram Evo is great and levels up the card a ton, but with the normal Battle Ram, it's just not all that. Skeleton Barrel is good because of its evolution. Skeleton Barrel outside of that is really just a niche semi-win condition that can get to the tower and is basically just used to bait out other things, or can be used in conjunction with other bait stuff to maybe get some more damage, but outside of its Evo, it's very mid. The Goblin Cage can be effective in certain situations, but most of the time I'd rather have a building that actually fights back, especially since a lot of the time when I'm using a building to defend, I'm using it to defend a push, and the Goblin Brawler kind of just spawns and dies instantly to the support troops like Wizard and Mini P.E.K.K.A. that are, or Hero, Wizard, and Mini P.E.K.K.A. that are behind the Giant. So usually, I don't want the cage. When I have Diddy, I enjoy Diddy. I suck things in, and you can suck in the win condition, start targeting the things behind it. Normal Goblin Cage is just... I just would rather have another building. The goblins are the most boring card in Clash Royale. That's just it. What deck runs the Tombstone? Not Lava Hound anymore. The card just really... It can be nice to halt bridge spam pushes, so I'd rather use it over the cage if there's no Evos involved. But it's just a kind of a... I mean, it dies to most things in most arenas. It's just not that good. I actually really enjoy playing the E-Giant and playing against the E-Giant. However, it's practically unusable against most of the cards in the meta, given there's the Hero Mini P.E.K.K.A. everywhere, there's cycle decks with the easy countering buildings everywhere. You just can't do anything if you're an E-Giant player when you have to E-Giant Lightning in order to break through something, and that instantly puts you down like the 9 elixir. Skarmy is really, really, really easy to destroy and easy to counter elixir and can be used as a surprise card or a bait card, but without its evo just dies way too easily. I miss evos, by the way, and the Skeleton Army evo covers up this problem, which is why it's currently one of the best evos in the game. I mean, the Ram Rider is either, oh my god, please nerf this card now, or irrelevant, and right now it's irrelevant. So something actually has to go wrong in your life or your past for you to be an Elixir Golem player. I wouldn't recommend anyone to actually play Elixir Golem, not because of the stigma, but because you're essentially playing Coin Flip Simulator, and this game is unfun enough as it is, so why are we playing Coin Flip Simulator in a game that's already almost Coin Flip Simulator? Like, it's not good versus the majority of decks in the game. There's no top ladder e-golem players. It's not reliable. You can't outplay. I mean, it's fun occasionally, but you know what? Also getting stomped and not being able to break through anything isn't fun either. So Night Witch is a relic of the past where you'd make beatdown pushes with her, and now you just kind of use whatever the broken card is instead. Like, I mean, I've seen Evo Xyz, I've seen Gob Curse, Mini P.E.K.K.A. Who knows what they put in Night Witch decks anymore? Golem doesn't use Night Witch. It uses the Zappies and Valk and Baby Dragon stuff. Really, Night Witch just doesn't... It's too easy to kill nowadays. Now, Bomb Tower is used in, like, Fan's Balloon deck, Balloon Cycle, if you don't know what that is. And outside of that, I don't know any other deck it's used in. Again, I'm not just ranking them because they're not used in any decks, but if it's not a good card, it's probably not going to be used in many decks. I'd rather have it over Tombstone, and I'd rather have it over Goblin Cage non-evo version, because Bomb Tower has a clear good against Splash, except usually I can run a cannon and then a card that's good against Splash, and now I get the bonus DPS. Bomb Tower hits like a wet paper towel, so it's not that great. Yeah, so Knight, like the Wizard, has an Evo and a Hero, and the Evo version is okay, but everyone just uses the Hero now. But if you want to use a Knight, I can give you like 5 other better mini tanks or DPS cards to use than the Knight. And if you're using the Hero Knight, you're just using the Hero Knight. The normal Knight is I don't know. I mean, it's not the worst card in the game, I guess. Earthquake actually isn't used much at all because beatdown pushes and bait decks, and Earthquake just kind of is the odd man out. You'd rather have a big spell. The big spells, I mean, like Fireball, Lightning, Poison, you'd rather have one of those. Earthquake's just, I mean, it's good in Hoggy Q. Hoggy Q's pretty ass, too, so not really that good. Flying Machine, like, we're once again, like a broken horse or whatever the saying is. You can draw up a situation where he gets value. It just really, it's squishy and it doesn't do that much damage. And pre-evos and heroes and stuff, used to be like, damn, this card's really annoying to go up against, and it's boosted. And now, after 40 evolutions and these stupid heroes, it's kind of fell off and it's not good anymore at all, especially in a meta where there's so much beef. You need DPS. The Flying Machine doesn't provide that. So Mighty Miner is hindered by the fact that you depending on what arena you're in, I'll assume you can use 2 slots. You can't use 2 heroes, or you can't use 2 heroes if you have a champion, and other champions in the game are significantly better right now. Mighty Miner just doesn't have really any stats to back him up. He's good in a few decks, and outside of that, he's not a bad card. He's really not a bad card. I mean, none of the rest of the cards on this list are bad cards. Mighty Miner he's just okay. So Suspicious Bush is a very annoying card, actually, that really applies tons of pressure for just 2 elixir, and you can just kind of drop it down, and your opponents need to respond to that. So if you're playing a hyperbait deck, this is this is so strong. It can do a whopping ton of damage if you leave it undefended for only 2 elixir. Yeah, so this is another one of the Evo Baby Dragon is okay. It's pretty solid in Golem and Lava. Normal Baby Dragon is... Nobody uses normal Baby Dragon. It's okay because it does really good splash damage, and I mean, flies. He's cute. Royal Recruits are sort of all right in the meta. You've got a few Recruits players here and there. You enter the Red League Grand Champion, and everybody and their mother plays Royal Recruits for some reason. But Royal Recruits are honestly, with what's in the meta right now, really easy to kill. Not big of a threat, and honestly, without their Evo, are kind of just like cannon fodder. The Minion Horde is a card that used to be really good, and when they nerfed minions a few times, Minion Horde kind of got that direct blunt to it, and there's a lot, or the direct blow no to them. They're not very good because a lot of the cards in the meta right now are geared upon like control and like wizards and poisons and furnaces, and there's a lot of bait and stuff that really isn't arrows bait, and Minion Horde doesn't have that much of a place because they're way too easy to kill. It's not really worth the risk reward, but they can still do consistent value. I just spit. We're moving on. The Minion Horde's all right. It's an all right card. Now, Freeze, if I'm going by a value standpoint, Freeze got buffed and can now do more damage, kills things like spear goblins. There's situations where paired with other cards it'll kill things, and Freeze is just, it's just annoying ass card to go up against. It's usually not a surprise card. You can always tell this guy's got a freeze. And even if they don't have a freeze, thank God, but they usually have a freeze. Freeze is a pretty annoying card, and it gets a lot of value in a lot of situations, but it can't be one of the best spells in the game just because it doesn't clear out swarms, and it can be used incorrectly a lot of the times to give your opponents massive counter pushes. Wall breakers are less of a threat than they used to be because they're not used in too many decks right now, but they're still annoying. They've just fell off a little bit in the current meta. Yeah, so Hero Mini P.E.K.K.A exists. Without its Evo, iDrag is okay. Honestly, it doesn't do too much in the meta right now without its Evo. You usually use the Evo if you're using the iDrag. It's kind of a niche card that can get stalled out versus a lot of cycle and bait decks and gets 0 value. So although you can get crazy value sometimes, you can also get 0 value, so it can't really be that good with its inconsistency. Bandit is like, I mean, it's just kind of a very boring mid card that applies some sort of bridge spam pressure, but is usually replaced by a different bridge spam card that does more. Usually, if you're running bridge spam, Bandit is okay to force out extra elixir, get a little bit of damage, be cheap. Really squishy and doesn't play mini tank or do good damage on defense, so that's something you have to weigh in when you're playing her. Yeah, so the heal spirit is actually a pain in the ass, and I have firsthand experience with playing the heal spirit and going, oh my god, this card is game changing. You can literally win games with the heal spirit. And she's also a baddie. Look, the Evo Witch is really, really, really broken. The normal Witch is like, I honestly used to call her one of the worst cards in the game. She's very annoying. She's extremely annoying. Even without the Evo, that wasn't a stutter, by the way. I don't think I've stuttered today. She does really good splash damage. She summons things and can stall things out. On offense, she's kind of not really a threat at all without her Evo. But on defense, she can be a really solid staple that fits in a majority of decks. Even though she might not be the best answer, she can fit in a lot of decks. I'd say Prince is a little bit better than the Witch just because of his offensive potential, and although he's not in that many meta decks right now, neither is the Witch. I mean, you can fit him in decks and really be annoying with the Prince. Not one of the best cards in the game by any means, but he can absolutely ruin your day. So Rocket is significantly lower than the rest of the spells because I think that, you know, while it's cool to get crazy Rocket value and while it's good in a couple of decks, you can justify using a Fireball, Poison, or Lightning in a lot of decks that they aren't great in. You can't just shove a Rocket in the majority of decks, even though it has the potential to get crazy value, and it does get good value in the decks like Minor Rocket and, you know, like some sort of log bait decks that don't really run Rocket anymore, but it can get really good value. It's just you more consistently get other value out of the other big spells, so it's not really worth it to play Rocket most of the time. It lacks the viability of the other spells. Next up is the Mega Knight, who is able to get a lot of value against unsuspecting opponents and is able to get good value against bait decks, but without his Evo lacks that show-stopping win condition halting ability that he just really doesn't have. As a normal Mega Knight, it's like, okay, it's just basically a beefed up Valkyrie that can jump. Without the ability to just stall win conditions, it's not that great of a card, but you can still get crazy value with it and oftentimes abuse people who are running decks that don't have the best answers to it, or you can bait out their answers. So Mega Knight's really just a mid-tier card, but the Monk is a card that really underperforms a lot, has pretty low usage percentage and win percentage, and I would put him over, you know, the Little Prince. He's not that great, you know, comparing champions, and the Mighty Miner because of his ability to just turn the entire game around. And when you have a Monk on the board, you have to be wary of playing into the Monk ability, but he's honestly not getting too much value against the current things in the meta. So it's like, there's not many decks or matchups where I'd go, damn, I really wish I had a Monk. This doesn't happen. Now, iTower, I think, although it does have a, you know, lowish use percentage, is a building that's really underrated and can get tons of value against a lot of stuff, specifically as you're climbing up in the arenas. As you get more into the meta and you have cycle and bait and stuff everywhere, it's like Hightower just oftentimes doesn't really have anything to do good against, but a lot of the time it does, and it's a pretty solid building. I think this is the lowest Lava's ever been on the list, and I'm not being biased. Lava Hound is pretty much unplayable unless you're really, really good at the game and you get a little lucky with some matchups. I think it's better than something like E-Giant, because when you're pushing up through ladder and mid ladder and low ultimate champ and stuff, people, even though people have a lot of air counters and stuff like that, you can honestly outplay a lot of them because they don't really know how to defend Lava Hounds, just because maybe it's uncommon to face, or maybe they don't really understand just how you should be defending them. But Lava Hound just isn't consistent win condition at all right now and isn't reliable, just like the E-Giant. Goblin Drill honestly is a deck that I'd really not recommend as a starter cycle deck to anyone. It's kind of hard to get that outplay damage when your opponents have good Goblin Drill counters, and in the current meta, Goblin Drill can win some games. You'll see some Gob Drill players up high, but compared to where it's been in previous seasons, nowhere close. Princess is alright. I mean, she's okay. She's really good in bait decks and useless outside of bait decks, but in bait decks, so help me God. Lumberjack, like, this card is really, without its Evo, it's like, it's annoying, but like, it has good DPS. In theory, it's a really good card on paper, but it's a little too squishy. Without its Evo, it honestly doesn't get too much consistent value on offense, but with it dropping Rage, which affects your units and does death damage, it's a good card. It's a good solid mid-tier card. Goblin Demolisher, used primarily in drill decks, is really annoying. Again, not a game-changing card, but it's a very, very underrated card in my opinion that does consistently good and I'll say consistently decent damage with some decent splash, with the ability to turn into a wall breaker and not only be good with knockback on defense, but can get some good tower damage just for 4 elixir. Pretty underrated card. I'm going to die before I finish this video. We're finally halfway through the list, guys. Elixir Collector. And Elixir Collector, honestly, is something that is really annoying to deal with, specifically because you have to spell it or your opponents will go up massive damage. And when you spell it, the 3 Musketeer players and Golem Pump players will take advantage of you. Brutally. Expo, I mean, it's good on top ladder. Some nerds are really good with Expo. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone trying to start the game. I wouldn't recommend starting the game at all, but I mean, Expo is just, it's a mid-tier win condition. It's better than Lava Hound. Statistically, it's not that much better than Lava Hound, but it's better on top ladder, so I guess it gets the edge over Lava Hound. All right, Boss Bandit honestly can be really annoying, as even after the nerf. I think if you're playing against the Boss Bandit and you, 1, don't have the perfect setup in your hand, or 2, are down elixir, God help you. Your opponents can lose interactions by spamming ability buttons, but if they're smart, which is saying a lot for a Boss Bandit player, they can absolutely ruin your day. Okay, yes, I know that, you know, we just said the Boss Bandit, and I'm putting the Berserker ahead of the Boss Bandit. Berserker has a really decent 7% use rate with a 50+% win rate. It's closer to 51%. The Berserker honestly used as a really good like stopgap between a mini tank and a damage dealer for only 2 elixir in several different decks, and I really honestly like her as a, you know, sort of a cycle card that's not useless, think Spear Goblins, and can honestly be used as a really good distraction or get out of jail free card against a lot of things where you need to spend more elixir than you usually would a lot of the time. The Ice Golem without its Evo is still a pretty solid card. It's good at tanking. It's good at kind of knocking or slowing things down. It's good at kiting. It's good at being a mini tank for just a little bit of elixir. It's good at distracting. Honestly, all around a pretty good card. Madawish is a card that just absolutely pisses me the hell off when I'm playing bait, because it only shows up when I'm playing Goblin Barrel bait, and it only shows Skarmy or something like that. But Mother Witch is a card that you can plug and play in your deck and completely counter a lot of stuff like Graveyard, a lot of stuff like bait, 2 of the decks or the types of archetypes that are very popular in the meta. So Mother Witch is going to directly benefit off of those things being popular. The Goblinstein Files, they are indeed an actual thing, and the Goblinstein has gone from one of the worst champions in the game to the Goblinstein being a very successful card in Graveyard. Now, he isn't really used at all outside of Graveyard, but Graveyard is so good in the meta right now, especially with Goblinstein, providing extra tankage for the Graveyard. It's the perfect synergy, using the ability to wipe out cards. Of course, you know how the Goblinstein works, and honestly, the stun can help a lot too. Really solid card in Graveyard right now. As far as champions go, I think that the Goblinstein does have a slight edge over the Archer Queen statistically, but the Queen is more versatile, more easier to play, and is more valuable in more of the game than Goblinstein. Goblinstein might be better than Queen on top ladder, but not everyone's on top ladder, and that's not the majority of the game, so I would put the Archer Queen a little above the Goblinstein. I was actually shocked by how good Sparky's stats were, sitting at a very respectable 6 and 50, which is like shocking because I thought it was one of the worst cards in the game. But I mean, Sparky, now that I think about it, is pretty good in Giant and is really hard to kind of deal with when you have that mini P.E.K.K.A. wizard type deck where you're constantly forcing out stuff from your opponent, and then they also have to worry about a Sparky. Sparky also isn't, it's getting a lot of value against a lot of decks in the meta right now, and there's less rockets than usual. So Giant Skeleton is interesting because it was one of the worst cards in the game, but Giant Skeleton has become something that is a threat and can hold its own a lot of the time. It can be used more optimally as like a lane stopper, like you put it in a lane and it will by itself defend the whole lane, which is what you hope for from a 6 elixir card like that. He's got a recent buff, and he's really good in current Giant Skeleton Graveyard decks. So again, with Graveyard being really popular, it's opened up more Giant Skeleton usage. Outside of that deck, he'd probably drop a lot, just like the Goblinstein, but he's dealing more consistent damage with both his bomb and his fist now. So I really like the Furnace, not only with the Evo, but as a card with insane range, second to a very few cards. It's only behind it like the Dark Goblin and the Princess, and so I don't even count the Princess, the Magic Archer and stuff. It outranges almost everything, spawns Fire Spirits, which are really, really effective at splashing things down and doing good damage, and he's really, honestly, with even without his Evo, a really solid support card, not only on offense, but on defense as well, and always forces out responses, which makes the rest of your deck better. Cannon card is an annoying card with a lot of damage and a lot of range. If it locks onto your tower, you're screwed. It also turns into a building, which honestly isn't that helpful most of the time, but it's a really big offensive threat, and on defense has a really underrated amount of DPS. I like this card a lot. Even without her Evo, Valkyrie is a card that can consistently hold her own against bait and is a very good mini tank for a lot of decks. Is she the best card to play in a lot of different decks? Probably not, but I could put a Valkyrie in almost any deck in the game and have success with the Valkyrie. She's really good even without her evolution. Now, I would say that the Skeleton King is probably worse than the Evo Valkyrie, but with the Skeleton King, you have that offensive potential and synergy with bait decks that makes it able to do a little bit more damage and apply a little more pressure than the Valkyrie does. Royal Delivery, I mean, it's not the most versatile spell in the world, but when you start playing Royal Delivery, it does so much damage. It spawns a nice little distraction unit as well, and it's just so hard to not get value with the Royal Delivery. Obviously held back by the fact you can't use it on offense, but my, oh my, is the Royal Delivery a really fun and efficient spell. Now, Magic Archer got buffed, and he is a pain in the ass because he's doing a lot more damage now than he used to be doing, which is able to hold him in this spot of, wow, he can actually hold his own and be my only range card in my deck. Though I wouldn't recommend it in a lot of decks, he now does enough damage where it's like, wow, he's not a wet paper towel shooter, and he can actually defend some things. Usually you would be using a different card because Magic Archer didn't do enough damage, but when he got such a big damage to his, or big buff to his damage with the rate of speed he attacks and the distance he has and the penetration, pretty solid card. However, I would say Musketeer is still better given she's a little more consistent with her damage and her survivability. She's less squishy than the Magic Archer. Even without her hero, she is really, really, really solid. One of the best ranged troops in all of Clash Royale. I know this is like mainly a troll card, but the sheer just potential to just win the entire game off the Goblin Curse is why I'm putting it this high. Love this card. It's got to be my favorite card in the game. Without its Evo, Giant Snowball is still really nice at stalling things and since it can be used on offense, I put it above the delivery, but without its Evo, there's only so much it can do, and it's not amazing, especially since it can't reset things. Now, Mini P.E.K.K.A. is much better with its hero, but it still does a whopping amount of damage. It's ridiculous, and has enough health to make it formidable even without its Evo on both, or hero, on both defense and offense. Golem is a strong win condition that can just roll most opponents that don't know how to defend it or have the wrong decks primed to defend it. Now, maybe the statistics are just lying to me or not telling the whole story, but Dark Prince with a 7% use rate and a 51% win rate is really strong right now. Not only because he's, again, a decent mini tank, but also has a ton of offensive pressure, does good splash, and can do a lot of underrated damage as well as apply pressure that he pretty much is only second to the Ghost in that kind of hybrid role of mini tank and offensive pressure. Zap, though, again, is still a tier above or below most of the spells, like most of the really good common spells. Zap is like, it's solid, resets things, can be played instantly, can be used to predict things even without its Evo. Zap is still a very solid spell in a lot of decks, and, you know, does a very good job at what it does. Though, what I would use it over Log or Barbell, that would be where I'm a little more hesitant. Now, I'd say Royal Giant is one of the cards that has an Evo that is high on this list because I don't think the Evo is that important to the card. Royal Giant, yes, the Evo is great and the knockback is great, but its strength is pretty much the same on both the Evo tier list and the normal tier list. Royal Giant is still a pretty strong win condition, pretty successful in most of ladder. Isn't the most dominant on top ladder right now, but that's, you know, why it's around 37. It's really strong for most of the game. Not the best top ladder win con, so it's not going to be on the top of the list. Now, Flying Royal Hoggies completely saved this card, but normal Royal Hogs are still really efficient at spell baiting, being able to be split so they can play with recruits that can open up different opportunities for you to apply split lane pressure. They are a really fun win condition that can dish out a ton of damage and spell bait, and honestly are pretty hard to stop without the perfect counters. Electro Wizard is a card with a ton of versatility, especially in mid ladder, that does a lot of damage and stuns and can be used in conjunction with other cards to stall things out and just be a really good answer for most of the pushes in the game. Although his offensive pressure is still kind of lacking, you always do need to respond to the E-Wiz or you're going to take significant damage, and E-Wiz is one of the most underrated cards in the entire game. Hunter is a very solid card that, while it doesn't have the craziest use percentage in the game, does a whopping amount of damage and can be the hybrid, and usually does it well, of a ranged troop and a DPS card. There's often times where you won't see the Hunter being used as much in a deck with like a mini P.E.K.K.A. in it, because it's kind of two of the same role. You're wasting a deck slot by doing that, but Hunter can be really strong even without its Evo in a lot of different types of decks because of his sheer damage output and the fact that you can protect him, and he has enough health to survive Fireball Zap, so pretty strong. Now, this is probably the one card whose stats don't back up its placement. Spirit Empress in the air behind like a Lava Hound push is just completely unkillable, and the only way you can deal with it is by stalling it out. And the ground version, honestly, is really underrated and does a lot of DPS. So the Spirit Empress is a very solid card. If you haven't tried her yet in like Lava Hound or something, please do. Maybe it's a bit surprising that Rascals are up here, but Rascals, ever since they got a couple consecutive buffs, with the biggest problem was that they were getting logged and the Rascal girls would just die and you'd have a 5 elixir like Rascal boy who sucked. He now does ridiculous like buffed damage, so he's basically, if you get logged, is basically having a knight because he has a good health and he has good damage. And if you're logging the Rascals, you're not going to be able to log the rest of the deck. They're a perfect synergy with log bait and are just dominating right now. I mean, realistically, how high can I put skeletons? I mean, they're the best. Whoa. All right, we made it like 53 minutes without stuttering, but the skeletons, I mean, how high can I really put them? They're great at cycling, probably the best cycle card in the game, great distraction unit, but they're freaking skeletons. Miner has fallen off a lot. He's not really used in Miner control anymore and is exclusively used as a secondary win condition or something used to snipe things. He's still pretty good. It's just Miner control is not a thing right now, so he's dropped significantly in the rankings. Ice Wizard is one of the best defensive cards in the entire game and can consistently defend huge pushes at ease. Goblin Gang is a good mix of offensive baiting, defensive baiting, good enough DPS, and having actual like air counters that they can, you know, Spear Goblins aren't great air counters, but they're a good jack of all trades that really does everything well. Mega Minion is a really solid card with crazy DPS, and for very cheap is a good not only, you know, support troop for your push, but also a good card to rely on for defense. Obviously not the best offensive pressure because it is pretty squishy, but Mega Minion is a really, really high DPS card that can help defend almost anything for very cheap. Giant, even without its hero, is insanely strong because it has crazy health and crazy damage, and unlike Golem or Lava, if you drop it in the back, you aren't instantly cooked because you have enough elixir to defend opposite lane pressure. Rage coming in at top 25, a really solid card that does damage. It probably shouldn't do damage, but it's doing damage, wiping out swarms, speeding up your units, and really is an effective card, especially when it's used in conjunction with things that, you know, are probably slower targeting, like the mini P.E.K.K.A, and it's just a really, really solid card that is better than the Zap because you're basically getting the same damage and you're just speeding up your push. Guards are very effective. I'd say better than the Goblin Gang because they can't be spelled as easily, so they're going to be way better on defense, probably a little bit less of an offensive threat, but guards are one of the best cards in the entire game and can defend almost anything in the entire game. Great addition to most decks in the game. The cannon, even without its evo, is one of the highest damage dealing buildings in the game. For just 3 elixir, can be used to kite things, distract things, do massive damage, and is solely used to wipe out pushes in mid ladder when you're protecting it. Does crazy damage and is honestly one of the best things you can have in your cycle deck. Royal Ghost is the perfect mix of having a lot of damage and going invisible to apply a ton of offensive pressure. He's got enough health to be a decent mini tank, does crazy damage, and is a threat that you always need to respond to. Balloon is a win condition that's always been really solid and can win you entire games just off of matchups, but I wouldn't say it's at its peak right now. However, its versatility is what has it so high. Can be used in a number of decks such as Loon Cycle, Lava Loon, Lumber Loon, none of which are amazing, but can still, you know, the versatility and the amount of things you can do with the win condition is not really matched by many win conditions in the game, unlike like Hog Rider, which is actually 2 spots away from this. But Balloon is a pretty solid, good, solid win condition. Tornado is a very high utility spell that synergizes well with a lot of not only splash cards, but also, you know, win conditions, and can be used not only on defense to buy you more time, activate the King Tower, but also on offense to pull things away or into your push, or just to synergize with a lot of cards in the game. Can't go wrong with having a Tornado. Hog Rider, need I say more, one of the most versatile win conditions in the entire game, and is just extremely annoying. Always gets that hit on 1 HP, and is a very solid win condition to build your deck around. Fisherman is basically the troop version of the Tornado, in which he's very high utility, mainly used in Royal Giant, of course, but has the utility to pull things away from things on offense, pull things toward him. He can be annoying versus buildings. He can pull things off of your troops. It's just really, really solid. Fisherman's underrated as hell and does crazy value almost every time he's played. Electro Spirit, the second best spirit in Clash Royale. Wait. Yes, the second best spirit in Clash Royale. The Goblin Hut is, in my opinion, the best building in Clash Royale because it's just insanely tough, not only hit points wise, affordable with 4 elixir, but spawns spear goblins that distract a lot of things as a troop, that can just distract things like mini P.E.K.K.As, but also can stack against things that aren't fighting back or distracted by other units. And honestly, it's going to force out responses every single time, which you can use to then use the rest of your deck to work around your opponents constantly having to spell or respond to the Goblin Hut. Zappies are really strong fireball bait, but also are really, really annoying right now because they're not only good fireball bait, good split lane pressure, you can stagger them to completely stop something. They do good enough damage as the pair of 3 of them, and are just really, really solid. Although they don't have the most offensive pressure, if you're struggling to defend something else that your opponent played and now you have to deal with with zappies too. They can stun lock you and deal really annoying damage. Bowler is basically an evo. Really annoying. He has knockback, he has penetration, he has good damage, he has swarm, and he has a lot of health. For 5 elixir, this is exactly what I'm asking for compared to things like the wizard or the Axie. Golden Knight, the best champion in Clash Royale, consistently gets crazy dash value even after his nerf to his dash, because he is basically a mini tank. He has enough health and damage to be a reliable mini tank, and he can also dash, applying ridiculous offensive pressure and getting crazy positive elixir trades against a lot of bait decks or graveyard decks, anything like that. You always have to be wary about the Golden Knight getting crazy dash value. Dark Goblin is one of the most annoying, okay, I'll say it, the most annoying card in the game. He does insane amounts of damage, has insane range, moves insanely quickly, and has to be responded to on both defense and offense, or he will sit there and just give you a positive elixir trades. I hate this card, especially in bait decks where you need to respond to him. And you're going to suffer the consequences because the rest of the bait deck, but you can't ignore this guy. Ridiculous value every single time he's played. Ice Spirit, the best spirit in Clash Royale. We now have our run of spells, starting off with the Poison, which is effective stun area control, slow area control. You're going to be able to really slow things down with the Poison, do pretty solid damage with it, and honestly is great right now because Graveyard is great, so you're going to have direct synergy with that, as well as being able to counter the Graveyard. A really good all-around utility spell. Lightning just edges out the Poison spell, however, because of its ability to get rid of buildings and quickly get rid of stacking troops. It can be really annoying to deal with a lot of things in the meta, and Lightning deals with most of them pretty successfully and oftentimes always for a positive elixir trade. Vines are very effective as a mini freeze, but not only as a mini freeze, as also an arrows spell that's able to obviously not deal the arrows, swarm countering ability, but is able to take out little cards like the Dark Goblin, the Firecracker, the Archers, things that are really annoying, pin things to the ground, be able to deal a little bit more damage to them with your ground units if they're in the air. Really all around good utility spell that can get you crazy little hits or interactions that normally wouldn't happen. Arrows are one of the best all-around spells in all of Clash Royale, being a good mix between getting some solid damage and wiping out swarms at will. In a bait meta, arrows are always going to be effective, and in some situations I'd rather have Fireball, given 3 Musketeers are everywhere, but arrows are still a very good option against a lot of decks. The Log, consistent, sturdy, hard. It's really easy to get log value with and is a staple in a lot of decks, although it's been replaced by the #1 card in the tier list. A little bit of a spoiler. Log is just log. All around, very versatile, very strong, has knockback, good spell. The current version of 3 Musketeers are one of the most brain-dead polarizing cards I've seen in the entire game. You just place them down and they have such insane range, damage, health. They're really hard to deal with, and if you know what you're doing, you just completely flat out destroy people with the 3 Musketeers. They're so good, in fact, that if you put them as your first pick in Mega Draft, you're guaranteed to put yourself in a better situation almost every single time. Fireball is a really effective spell that does high damage, is very good at dealing with most things well, although it won't completely kill things like Lightning. It's often paired with small spells like the Log or the Barbell that for the same cost is going to be able to still kill things with a little more flexibility. Minions are so ridiculously overpowered. They're used in so many different decks. Minions do so much damage, are very versatile as both a air support troop, a defensive card, a spell baiting card, a DPS dealing card. They do everything. Anything you want to do, minions will do. Wipe out swarms, take out high HP units. Minions are just amazing. Now, Graveyard, ever since the rework, has not only gotten a lot better because it gets more consistent damage, but the matchups in the current meta favor Graveyard heavily. So Graveyard has gotten 2 indirect buffs, and the rest of its deck has gotten buffed a lot as well. And currently, right now, Graveyard is one of the easiest things to play in the entire game, and is very hard to, of course, break through. Graveyard's thing a lot of the time was not being able to get consistent offense down, because Graveyard has always been a successful defensive deck, but now when you're getting near guaranteed damage every time you play your Graveyard, even if opponents counter it, it's really, really hard to stop. And I mean, I guess not the most exciting #1 card ever, but Bar Barrel is very consistent very, it's better than the log right now because of the barbarian that spawns, even though it did get a nerf, is going to be able to deal with range cards easier. So while opponents' range cards are distracted, you can bar barrel them, and you can either use that to just kill them in combination with another range card or spell, maybe even. And the bar barrel just consistently does a lot of the things that the log does, but spawns an extra barbarian for distraction and for offensive purposes. That makes the full list of the best 121 cards in the game. Thank God.